all three verses of that. Let's sing.
This is my Father's world, and to my listening ears, all nature sings and round me rings the music of the spheres. This is my Father's world, I rest me in the calm of rocks and trees, of skies and seas, his hand the wonders all. This is my world, the birds and birds praise, the morning light, the lily white, declare their Maker's praise. This is my Father's world, He shines in all that's fair. In the rustling grass I hear Him pass, He sings to me everywhere. This is my Father's world. Oh, let me never forget that though the wrong seems so strong, God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world. The battle is not done. Jesus who died shall be satisfied, and earth and heaven be one.
Song before Brother Lay's lesson will be page 453, 453. We'll sing all three verses of this. Let's sing.
I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore. Very deeply sank within, sinking to rise no more. But the Master of the sea heard my despairing cry. From the waters lifted me, now safe am I. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. All my heart to Him I give, ever to Him I cling. In His blessed presence live, ever His praises sing. Love so mighty and so true, merits my soul's their song. Faithful, loving service to Him belongs. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. Souls in danger, look above, Jesus completely saved. He will lift you by His love out of the angry waves. He's the Master of the sea, those who will obey. He, your Savior, wants to be
in your songbooks, page 916. 916 will be the song after the lesson. Brother Ray.
Can you hear me all right? I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the DeQuincy Church of Christ. This is a history that was put out about 35 years ago. Brother Raymond Spears put this together, and it says the DeQuincy Church of Christ history. 1991, I see, is when he put this out. So that was a while back. It contains some of the information I'll refresh in your mind tonight, and I added a good bit that was not put in this. It was kind of condensed. So if any of y'all have, some of you might ought to have this. Joey's got one. Okay. Anyway, if you want a copy of this, holler at me and I'll give it to you. You can make a copy of it. It's got some pretty good stuff in it. Covers partly what I'm talking about tonight. I added a little bit along here, there, and yonder. I got a lot of paperwork here to keep me straightened out on all these dates and figures and numbers and people and such like stuff. Really appreciate being here and be glad to do this. So we got some good many guests, even from out of town tonight. I'm very happy to have my two remaining sons, my oldest one, Hank, and my youngest one, David, and David's wife, Carlene. They're here with us tonight. Glad they could be with us. And I have a very special guest I brought, Norma Blackwell. She's a member of the Sulphur Church of Christ. I sometimes preach down there. And I was going down there and preaching. If anything I hate to do is eat by myself. That ain't no fun, is it? So I saw that little widow woman sitting off over there in Sulphur. I said, say, would you like to go out and eat lunch with me? I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was something on this order. If you got the money, honey, I got the time. Anyway, we got to go and eat together, and we enjoy each other's company. Tonight, she's been unable to drive her car because of some strong medication she's been taking. She's had some infections in that, you know. So I had to drive all the way to Sulphur to pick her up, bring her all the way here tonight to hear me. Then I got to drive all the way back and all the way back. What a man won't do for a little feminine company. It beats all I've ever seen. But I have found this, taking her out to eat, a good restaurant covers a multitude of old age handicaps. And I got a lot, see, where I stand. One thing, though, that she wanted me to make very clear before we get started. We do go out, we eat, we enjoy one another. But she wants you to know that she is younger than I am. Definitely younger than I am. In fact, everybody's younger than I am, just about. All right, we got to get started. The DeQuincy Church of Christ is 91 years old. I've been a member of the DeQuincy Church of Christ. No, I have been a member of the Church of Christ for 85 years, a member of the DeQuincy Church of Christ for 83, and 2 years I had to move to Lake Charles, Pat and I. We placed our membership with the Boulevard Church of Christ. 2 years of membership there. But I've been 83 years, I was a member of the DeQuincy Church of Christ. I think it's good for us to stop and think about history. You know, in school, we had a lot of history courses, American history, this kind of history, that kind of history, and it's good. It's good to think back on the old time. The Bible even puts the blessings on this kind of lessons. In fact, Jeremiah 6:16 says, stand ye in the ways and see and ask for the old path. Where is the good way? And walk therein, and you shall find rest unto your soul. David said, Psalms 143:5, I will remember the days of old. And you know, he didn't say that once. He said that 3 or 4, maybe 5 times in the book of Revelation. And that's what we're going to do tonight. Remember the days of old. Old folks like to talk about the good old days. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, the good old days. Now, I want to start in the year 1926, because that was the year I was born. Now, my parents, a couple of years before that, had moved down into what we call the Hyatt conclave down here in south of town, outside of the city of DeQuincy. My daddy, his brother, and another brother, they came to DeQuincy and built a little grocery store, and then built them a little home out there near each other, and they moved their old daddy and mama off of Bearhead Creek and moved them down here, and we was all living pretty close together. And everything was fine, and that was 1926. And I was born in 26, and in 3 years, when I was 3 years old, the Great Depression come upon the United States. Y'all have heard about it. It was a time of 6 to 8 years when everything was very hard and people were hungry, no money. Oh, it was bad, bad days. Now, we made it pretty good out where we were living. Let me tell you, they was running this little cash grocery store. Every store in town was a credit store back in those days. But they didn't have any backup cash, so they run in a cash store, and they could sell stuff a little cheaper, and they was doing pretty good. And they was turning their money and buying other stuff, and everything was going pretty good. Depression hit, and about a week after it hit, they went up to the bank one day with their money from they took over the day before, and the one bank in town, Calcasieu Marine National Bank, the doors were closed and a lock on it. Couldn't get the money. Incidentally, Calcasieu Marine Bank, 10 or 12 years later, was able to reopen in DeQuincy, and they paid the Hyatt brothers, as well as other people, every cent that they had closed the door on, plus interest. And then they became one of the premier banks of this area. But times were hard. Now, we got along fine because we lived on a little farm out there. We had hogs, we milked the cows, we had gardens, we had fruit trees. We was nearly self-supporting. And so we was making it pretty good. But I do remember how hard it was right at first, particularly. I would catch Daddy in the morning at 6 o'clock. No buses came out to where we were to go to school. I'd catch Daddy to work, and I'd wait around the store till it got to be time for me to walk another few blocks to school. And when we'd drive up to his store, it had a long porch on the front. And I remember that just as well. We'd drive up during that Depression. Hard times. People were hungry. There would be 1, 2, 6, 8 hobos sitting on the front porch at 6 o'clock because they knew that these Hyatt brothers would give them a little something. And I remember they'd go in, and you'd go there and they'd slice off with a knife a thin slice of lunch meat, put it between 2 pieces of bread, put it in a little brown paper bag, and give each one of these hobos that. And they were thankful to get it. Hobos were traveling through on trains, and they'd get off at these little towns and try to work, do anything for you for a little something to eat. My mother has fed them out the back door. Meanness wasn't prevalent like it is today. And you never was concerned about them, but people had a hard time during the Depression. It lasted 6 or 8 years, but we made it pretty good down there. Now, to tell you all of that, the 3 Hyatt brothers were devoted Baptists. That's Daddy and my Uncle Elijah and my Uncle Tommy. And when they got here, they located a little Baptist church that they liked. It was called then the Second Baptist Church. It's right over there by Brother Paul's house. Now, what's the name of that now? Temple Baptist Church. And that was at one time known as the Second Baptist Church. And Daddy, I was big enough by then, Daddy would make me go with him. Jack, my younger brother, wasn't old enough. He'd stay home with Mama. Mama didn't want to go with him. She was raised out in the country where not too far from Daddy, but she always went to the Church of Christ. And she didn't like that Baptist church much, didn't like much what they taught, and she just kind of bowed up. Now, she wasn't but not 5 feet tall, maybe 90 pounds soaking wet. She'd stand up for what she believed. I tell you, she was kind of a little banny hen. Of course, Daddy, he was kind of hard-nosed too. And we had a lot of ruckuses about that. I always wanted, and finally, Mama, on a trip back out to her parents out there in the country by Boxwood, that's where she was born and raised, was baptized. And her sister, Aunt Maudie, next door, my aunt, she was baptized. Now, they got 2 sisters, members of the Church of Christ, and their 2 husbands, they're Baptists. Daddy says, we go in here. Mama said, no, we ain't. Anyway, so they decided, my mother and Aunt Maudie, they no Church of Christ in town. They didn't know anybody in town that was a member of the Church of Christ. They had learned about that out there near Boxwood out there. But anyway, they said, we'll just start meeting in Mama's home. Well, guess where I wanted to go? Daddy's lasted 3 hours. Mama's 30 minutes. Where do you think I wanted to go? At the time, I didn't know enough about it, but I'm going to go to the shorter one, obviously, at about 6 years old, whatever. But anyway, so they started meeting. That was along about 19. She was baptized, my mother, in 1932. So thereabouts, close to that time, shortly after she was baptized, they started meeting in Mother's house. Now, all they would do, they'd cook them a little unleavened bread, and they got a bottle of grape juice from Daddy's store, and they would have communion, and they'd pray, and they'd sing, and they'd read the scriptures. They didn't pass the hat. Because nobody had any money. It was hard times right in the middle of that Depression. Hey, let me tell you, what I would do when I got home Friday evening, the first thing I'd do is grab me some sort of scrap somewhere, run down in the swamp, down right below where I was raised, and put me out a bunch of traps and trying to trap possums or coons. Now, you know what I did with them? So I went back Saturday morning, and if I had them, it was in a trap. And then I had to catch them and keep them alive. And that's the job of the coon. They'll eat you up. You're not careful. But you got to get them coons and knock them in the head a little bit or addle them to get them in a tow sack. Because if I could get a possum, I could go up in the quarters. That's where the black folks live. We call it quarters. And sell a possum for 25, 30 cents sometimes. And a good fat coon would make 4 bits, 50 cents. Hey, you talk about living high on the hog. Times were hard back in those days. Back in those days, the black and the white communities were pretty well segregated. The black folks lived on the other side of the tracks, and they're in what we call the quarters. And the white folks lived on this side. We got along good. I went through there, and I knew a lot of them, played with a lot of the black kids. I was not too bothered by segregation. If you just said the word segregation, I doubt if I knew what you was talking about. But we got along good with them. Many of the blacks shopped at the Hyatt Brothers store, and we hired black folks to help us at the store. And we got along good. And I never bothered me to go through there night, day, don't make a difference. I knew them, they knew me, and they were pretty good relations. But they would not, even after the Church of Christ began to be functional here in DeQuincy. Hard to get them up here. They had their own churches down there, and that's where they like to go to church. And so anyway, I used to stay down there a long time. But Mother and her aunt started meeting at homes, and that went on for a little while. And later, Daddy heard about another couple in town that were members of the church. He didn't know it. Mama didn't know it. And they were, I think, the Carmichaels. They found one other couple that hadn't been meeting. And so they got them to come, and he said, well, I know a place we can get to meet. The little Presbyterian church that was here had closed up, and they said, you can use our building. Now the Church of Christ is meeting in the Presbyterian building. Daddy's going to the Baptist church, and I'm kind of torn between here, but everything's doing a little bit better. And then the first thing you know, we went a little bit further, and and during that time, we met also in the city hall, in various homes, in the old Presbyterian church that had been closed. And ever now and then, over around Port Arthur and Beaumont, there was a Church of Christ was pretty strong, and they would occasionally send a preacher over here, and we'd actually have a preacher on Sunday morning. And hey, we were just really, things were going good, and we were just getting along as happy as we can be. And by 1935, there were 4 or 5 families assembling together. And we'd save a little bit of money. What little we got, you got precious little money. Money was scarce we hadn't got out by 35. You're still in the Depression. It didn't get over with till about 36, 78, somewhere along in there. But anyway, we kept working. And then in early 1936, 2 families moved to town, Brother Aaron Ferris and Brother Moy. They were both railroad men. One was a railroad engineer. The other was some sort of a fancy mechanic on railroad engines. And the railroad business was booming here in DeQuincy. And they moved to town, and they had a great impact. They were strong Christians, both of them, both families. Brother Ferris particularly had a great impact on my life. But when they moved to town, things got going better. Now we had about 6 or 7 families coming pretty regular. meeting first one place and the other. And right quick, these two guys, they were donating a pretty good bit to the church because they both had good paying jobs. And things were looking better. And they said, we've got to build us a building. We are hit and miss here, there, and yon, and doing pretty good. We got to have a building. So we had been saving up money for several years now, not paying any preachers to amount to anything, and had a fair amount of little money. So we bought a lot on Harrison Street. You go right there, half a block, that's Harrison Street. Up towards the other end, we bought a lot right there and built the first Church of Christ building. It was 28 foot wide. It was 40 feet long. You walked in, you had a little auditorium. At the back, you had a little rostrum with a little pulpit. And then you had a wall behind that. We did not have a baptistry in the first one at first. Couldn't afford it. We did a lot of the work ourselves, carpenter work and all like that. We mostly spent our money on lumber. And in the back, 2 little rooms where we had 2 classrooms. But hey, to us, it was fancy. Incidentally, the building is still there. Eventually, we sold it. Somebody bought it, and it's been lived in ever since. How many of y'all know where that building's at? There's 1. 2, okay.
What's the address?
I don't know. It's on Harrison Street. If you went all the way to the Sulphur Highway, or if you come back 1 block, it's on this side, the second building on this side, and the second block from the Sulphur Highway on Harrison Street. And it's still kind of a shotgunny house. Now they've added to it, but it was just, that's what we call a shotgun house. You open the front door and shoot all the way to the back door. But anyway, and that's where the first church was. Okay. So that was completed in 1937. And Brother Ed Holt came over here from Port Arthur. I remember him well and helped us a lot along that time. All right, now, some other families had come along and come in, and we had a number of preachers, Brother Pounds, Brother Albert Franks, Brother O'Dowd, Brother M.B. Franks, Brother Copeland, Brother Ben Salter. And then in 1938, I was baptized. I was 12 years old. And I remember that very, very well. Brother, can't say his name. Anyway, I was baptized. I came up one night. Brother Lambert was preaching a meeting in our new little building. And I came forward one night and was baptized. Now, we didn't have no baptistry. We've been taking people out to Beckwith Creek baptized. You understand that? And we had been, when they come at night, we'd all drive out to Beckwith Creek at night, line our cars up, shine down there the old swimming hole so we could see, and go down there and baptize them. But the last time we went to baptize somebody, we lined our cars up, shined them down there, and there's about 4 moccasins swimming around down there. We decided we'd wait till the next day and baptize them. So I came one night, waited all night. Don't let me die tonight, Lord. But the next morning early, they baptized me in Beckwith Creek. But we had to quit because actually we saw several moccasins swimming around at night. They go out at night and catch them. So we decided, but eventually we got us a little baptistry in that building down there later on. But anyway, we enjoyed all those little things in there. All right, now let's go a little bit further here. I got to move along. But in 1994, a significant thing happened that helped the DeQuincy Church of Christ immensely. 4 families from the Boxwood area below Maryville out there moved to DeQuincy. They were the Frankses and the Spears family. I think maybe 2 families from each group. They were devout Christians. They had been well seasoned as Christians out there at the Boxwood area congregation. And they came here and they was a great addition. They brought with them preachers, teachers, leaders, And by now, the church had grown up by 1944 to about 30 members here. I got to get to move along. Anyway, but in 1950, Brother Sam Behrman was here working with the church as our preacher. And for the first time, we ordained some elders for this congregation. We were still on the Harrison Street location, but we ordained elders. I do remember my daddy, would you believe it? He was finally converted. My uncle, would you believe it? Both of them that died in the Wool Baptist, he was converted, and they became two elders, along with, I think, Brother C.A. McFadder and one other one I can't remember. But we finally got ordained some elders. And in 1951, now the elders were appointed, our first elders in 1950. In 1951, the First Baptist Church in DeQuincy were meeting in a building right on the other side of that wall. Right there. They had a rather large, nice building. It was up off the ground, not on the ground, you walked upstairs, but it was pretty big. Its auditorium was, I believe it would hold more than this. Pretty nice building, but they wanted another building, and they decided to build it where it's at. Y'all know where the First Baptist Church is, right up here. So up there they went and bought them a lot and started building a building and put their one for sale. It was right there, way down on Harrison Street here. So the elders decided they was selling it at a good price. They said, we'll buy it. And when they moved out, we bought that building. And we also bought the parsonage, which was behind it back there on that vacant lot. And so we started meeting over there. And that worked out good in so many ways. Then Kenneth Badgett came along, and he was our preacher. And by 1967, we began to think about, incidentally, and by 67, we decided, meeting in that old building, that we build a new building right here. Now, we had to acquire a little more ground, and we managed to do that. And we moved a little bit. See that building? We left that one there, kept meeting in it, and we built this one here. I remember Brother Kyle Perkins and myself were deacons at the time. And the elders came to us. Now, the way we financed it is we went to the bank and said, we got to borrow a pretty good chunk of money. And they said, well, the church don't really have much money, all that much money. We had some. But anyway, what you got to do is get all of your members, come up here and sign a note for the money we're going to borrow. Well, we told everybody that wanted to, and so nearly everybody went up there. We all signed the note, borrowed the money. And now the elders said, now we got to get this building built. And we talked to different people and this and that and the other and figured out we'd already seen something like this. This type of building back in those days, they were building lots of them all over the country. You've seen them if you travel around much. A lot of buildings look like them back then. Anyway, they said, Kyle, you and Ray are put over this. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to get us a man that's going to be the overseer, but y'all got to deal with the money, paying, seeing that the materials flow in. Well, we dragged through that. Me and him, neither one knew nothing. But you know, the Lord helps people out just trying to help themselves. I found that out a long time ago. And anyway, we got this built in pretty good shape. Now, bear this in mind. Let me see. I've got this wrote down here somewhere. This building is 56 years old. Basically, they haven't changed very much. Now, we've change some of the walls, maybe put different plywood or this, that, and the other. But the basic shape, size, and all of the building, we've added on an annex, so on and so forth. Pretty much the same. 56 years. We've changed pews, seats, but basically the building is pretty much the same. I think the good Lord was with us because we was trying to do His will, and I believe that with all of my heart. So that new building was built in 1967, and we kept the old parsonage for a good while. The preacher lived back there, and in 1978 we brought the house down the street for the new parsonage, where our preachers here lately have been living down there. And later on, we added this annex, of course, back here. And of course, we've changed beaches and this, that, and the other. But basically, we still have the same thing. What's noteworthy about the DeQuincy Church of Christ? And if I had to just give it to you in 2 words, it would be extraordinary perseverance. I tell you, them 2 women started with nothing and just wouldn't say no or we can't or no. They just kept on. It's amazing to me. I remember it now, what my little mother went through to be able to stand on her own 2 feet, and her and my Aunt Maudie got the congregation of the Church of Christ in DeQuincy. They just kept on keeping on. From the very first, if I'd have been looking as a gambler, what are the odds of that making it? Very slim. But that's not counting God, see. I believe that God was with them. I believe that all of that pointed in the right direction. These 2 women, without money, without a building, without any men, without anything, I tell you, it was hard times right in the middle of the Depression. And they just kept on. Church of Christ in DeQuincy, small, weak, without funds, without preachers, but they had God with them. And that makes all the difference in the world, and as they fought for the truth. Another thing about the church, this church has never been ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. We've preached it, we've defended it, we've protected it the best we can. I tell you, that's the part about that I get the most excited about, talking about this little church years ago, particularly, and the way we would try to evangelize. We were pretty ignorant. We hadn't been to big city churches. I didn't know what a big city church was. And we would, of course, anytime we had lots of gospel meetings. Of course, back in those days, everybody didn't have a TV and a phone that gives you everything in the world. You didn't have all that. And you could get people to come to meetings. I understand all the reasons why maybe they're not, you don't have them anymore. But back in those days, people would come to meetings. And they'd get 2 or 3 of us that had bicycles, and we'd ride all over town and put down circlers in every house in town. And we'd get people out to meetings, and a few of them would be converted. And I tell you what, we'd done a time or 2. Well, they can't get them to come down there to that church. I said, all right, we got us a tent, went right smack down in the middle of town, put that tent up and held a 2-week gospel. They didn't know what a week gospel meeting was. 2-week gospel meeting right downtown, right in the middle of town, on the main street. Right just past where that library is. Right there, that was a vacant lot. I remember that just well. Loudspeakers. Hot funeral home fans. But there's preaching the word. I thank the Lord was with me. We got interested because there was a lot of great black preachers back in those days. Some of the best preachers I ever heard in my life are black preachers. They know how to preach, let me tell you. And they were concerned because there was no black folks, Christians, that is, not members of the Church of Christ. And we trying to reach them. Now, we would always put out circlers down there, just like we did everybody else. And there would occasionally one maybe come, but that's about all. Well, they said, we're just going to have some black meetings. And we got the black preachers to come in here. And these black preachers, if anything from this, I can tell you, they were not bashful. They would go right down there to the black churches and talk them into letting them preach at their church. And they would set out a section up here for the white folks. And a bunch of us would go down to the Methodists, the Baptists, you name it, down there, Pentecostal black church, and hold a gospel meeting in their church houses. And after that, preached about an hour and a half and cleaned them all up with the truth, then they'd have a debate between their preacher and ours right there. We don't do that no more, do we? We don't even get close to that. I remember we have held 4 or 5 tent meetings right down there by that railroad track, because that would get some white folks and some black folks. Funeral home fans. You know what a funeral home, some of y'all don't even know what a funeral home fan is. Years ago, every funeral home, that's what they put out to advertise. Fans for the churches. Of course, we all had to have a fan before we had all this good stuff. Everybody had a funeral home fan. But we had some of the best. Luke Miller, as good a preacher I've ever heard in my life. Black as the ace of spades. We was trying to preach the gospel every way we could. We were pretty ignorant. We didn't know all the etiquette of religiosity, but we were doing the best we can with what we got. I tell you, I admire the forefathers of this congregation so much for the way they was at it. I tell you what, while we were still in that Baptist church, it was right over there when we bought that Baptist church, we had a guy by the name of O.C. Lambert. He was a great scholar, but he was also a great scholar of Catholicism. And he was adamantly opposed to the Catholic doctrine. And he wrote a book, Catholicism Against Itself. He was preaching over in the Beaumont, Port Arthur area, and he wanted to come over here and hold a meeting. And we said, okay. And the name of the meeting was Publicized Catholicism Above Itself. And he held it in that Baptist church where we were meeting. We had bought that building. It's the Church of Christ building. And we filled it up with not only Church of Christ members, but members from denominations all over town, except the Catholics. And I don't believe, to my knowledge, that one of them came. But even these denominations could say amen to a lot of that, because there is a difference between Protestantism and Catholicism. And I remember that well. Another time while we was in that same building, we held a debate. Y'all know what a debate is. Some of y'all don't. You've heard of them, I bet, but you hadn't been to one, have you? How many of y'all ever been to a church debate? I saw one little hand. Is that all?
Seen them on TV.
Seen them on TV. Well, we used to have them. That's when two religions that differ get together, talk about their differences. Open the Bible. See what the Bible says. Don't have it no more. We had a debate with the Pentecostals. Y'all ever seen their buildings? They fill them up on Sunday morning too. Strong group. We was having about 40 meeting over here. That's what you call a David and Goliath. Yes, we'll debate you. We filled that building so full. You couldn't even get half of the people in there. Of course, one of them churches, inundate us. We'd get all of our 30 there, and then they'd bring their 600 over here. But that's all right. We had a rousing good debate. Did we change anybody? I don't think we changed a soul, but we had a good debate. We was trying to spread the truth. I'm glad that God don't grade us on how many people we convert. So sometimes it's hard to convert people. But I remember you couldn't get half the people in that came up. There's outside on the lawns everywhere. That was something else. It was a rousing good time. Funeral home fans was a going in there. I'll guarantee you for sure. But my point that I'm trying to make is this little congregation, for all of its smallness, and has always stood up for the truth, what they believe the Bible teaches. And we're just trying our best to all follow what our Savior told us to do the best we can. And I think that's why it's been successful in so many ways. It was maybe we were a little overzealous in what we were doing and how we were trying to do it. I ain't got enough sense to know. I just do the best I can with what we got. And that's about all a mule can do. But this little congregation has always tried to reach out. And I'm so proud and happy about that. I know that there's always been a concern for those less fortunate, that we've been generous in the best way we can. We've tried to return love for love and reach out in every way that we can. And always, this congregation has maintained a good teaching, training, preaching programs. It has developed so many young men. I have seen in my lifetime, I don't know how many preachers that were trained and taught right here that have gone out to preach the gospel from this very congregation right here. Dozens of preachers have come out of this little congregation right here. And when I was getting this lesson together, I tried hard as I could, to think of something fault, something that's not right about this congregation. I really couldn't. I couldn't. Obviously, I'm prejudiced. I've been here all of my Christian life, with the exception of 2 years when I was a lecturer. So naturally, I would be prejudiced. I love this congregation. I love everything about it. I love the way it's worked and tried and done the best. And most of all, and I'll tell you, I think one of the reasons for its great success in so many ways, in spite of our smallness, is because it's always, since shortly after the beginning, developed and appointed good leadership. I look back over the list of elders and deacons, preachers, teachers, deacons. It's amazing. And how many preachers from this congregation has gone out? You don't find many congregations existing for all these years as this has existed without somewhere along the line pretty bad internal problems or splits or this or that and the other. Not this one. You won't find it. To my knowledge, never a major problem existed in the church. I think it's partly because we was depending on Christ, obviously, and partly because we always appointed and kept excellent leadership. And so, for 91 years, the Church of Christ in DeQuincy has never had a major problem. Sure, we have our ups and downs. Sure, at best we're imperfect. Sure, we pray every night for God to forgive us of our sins. But I am so proud in a good way, not as vain glory, but in a good way. So proud and glad that I am a member of the DeQuincy Church of Christ. And I've seen them. They've sent out so many preachers, helped so many people. Always, we've never really had any serious financial problems. And that's amazing, starting with two women with not two nickels between them. Never have really, because the money comes in. I believe that God has been with us and helping us to this day. Jesus said we are supposed to be a city that's set on a hill. Let our light shine. And I believe DeQuincy has been doing that, and they've been doing that for 91 years. So I love this congregation. I love every member of it. And I want you to, if I had to leave you with any words, just keep on hanging on. One of these days, we're going to be at the marriage supper of the Lamb in a better place. Bride of Christ. And that's what, of course, we're looking for. What time are we supposed to stop? At 8? I got 2 minutes. I don't want to leave one out. I get a little discouraged sometimes. I look around this part of Louisiana. I've been living in this part of Louisiana all my life. Born and raised here. Hope I die here. I've seen so many little congregations fade away. Leesville, Maryville, Ville Platte, Eunice, Deweyville. A number of others are just hanging on. I hate to see that. Worries me. I don't know what the answer to it is. I don't even know what to tell you we need to be doing that we aren't doing. I'm not sure about much of anything. Long ago, I've decided I don't have the answer to all the world's problems. But I do believe this, if I was going to say anything, don't give up. 2 little women, no money, no nothing. 2 little women. And it worked out fine. Don't give up. Like David said, I will remember the days of old. That's what old folks like to do. Remember the good old days. You don't have any idea how old I am. I remember the good old days. Thank you for your attention tonight. And I hope this helps your pride, and not in a good way, of being a member of the DeQuincy Church of Christ. God bless all of you. Thank you.
What a day, glorious day. What a day that will be when my Jesus I shall see, and I look upon his face, the one who saved me by his grace. When he takes me by the hand and leads me through the promised land, what a day, glorious day that will be.
Thank you for being with us tonight. And Ray, thank you very much for a great lesson on the history of the DeQuincy Church and reminding us of the hard times and what people went through to practice their religious freedom. Brother Paul, would you dismiss us, please?